So, as you might expect, an enormous amount of effort goes into designing and programming all of those wonderful video game bosses that we cherish so fondly, and is usually the result of dozens or even hundreds of team members coming together to deliver a truly unforgettable experience. But sometimes, for whatever reason, bosses end up scrapped and left on the cutting room floor. But in some very rare cases, these forgotten bosses are resurrected and appear in other games. So let's take a look at some of the juiciest ones, shall we? As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 9 scrapped bosses used in other video games. Number 9. Dark Souls 3's SNAKESOUL, Elden Ring. Now, considering the many bosses featured in each and every From Software game, it's little surprise that the likes of Dark Souls and Bloodborne left a number of tantalizing bosses on the cutting room floor, and given the design ingenuity of most every FromSoft boss, can you really blame them for recycling any of their discarded ones? Well, that's exactly what happened with the ulcerated tree spirit from the developer's recent Elden Ring. Enterprising players dug into the game's code and discovered that it actually had the data name SNAKESOUL, which to hardcore Dark Souls fans is a moniker that should sound familiar. Following the release of Dark Souls 3 in 2016, data miners discovered references in the game's code to a creature called SNAKESOUL, which never actually appeared in the game itself. Furthermore, the ulcerated tree spirit even bears a strong resemblance to a mutated tree-like creature that was featured in leaked alpha stills of Dark Souls 3, yet never appeared in the game proper. And so, we can freely deduce that the ulcerated tree spirit is indeed the mysterious SNAKESOUL, finally closing the door on a years-long mystery. Number 8. Metal Gear Solid 2's Old Boy, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Hideo Kojima is one of those peerlessly productive creatives who comes up with far more ideas than he's ever capable of implementing, though one of his discarded bosses for Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty actually ended up being reused for the third game. Metal Gear Solid 2 was originally set to feature a boss called Old Boy, a former mentor of Big Boss who was over 100 years old and rendered biologically immortal due to mutant enzymes in his body. For reasons unknown, Old Boy was scrapped, yet Kojima ended up recycling core tenets of his character for 2 of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater's most memorable bosses, the boss and the end. Old Boy's backstory as a mentor to Big Boss became a defining aspect of the boss's character arc, while the end was also roughly 100 years old and a supremely skilled combatant, not unlike Old Boy. Considering that the boss and the end are ultimately 2 of the most compelling boss characters in the history of the Metal Gear franchise, it's fair to say that everything probably worked out for the best here. Number 7. No More Heroes' Nathan Copeland, No More Heroes 2 Desperate Struggle. One of the most memorable bosses in No More Heroes 2 Desperate Struggle is Nathan Copeland, the hip-hop-loving assassin who deploys his shape-shifting boombox as both a weapon and armor. But the wonderfully wacky villain was actually conceived and created during production of the first No More Heroes, and was even supposed to be the first UAA member the protagonist Travis Touchdown took on. For reasons unknown, he was ultimately swapped out for the boss Death Metal, yet when it came to putting the sequel together, it was simply a no-brainer that Nathan would be making an appearance. In an interview with Nintendo Power, creator Suda51 said of Nathan, "When I started working on this installment, I knew right away that I wanted to bring Nathan back. No More Heroes 2 just wouldn't be the same without Nathan, so it was certainly a smart call." Number 6. Crash Bandicoot's Tiny Tiger and the KOMODO Brothers, Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. Now, the Crash Bandicoot franchise boasts a host of memorable bosses, 2 of which are undeniably Tiny Tiger and the KOMODO brothers from the fantastic second game, Cortex Strikes Back, and yet it turns out that both of these bosses are actually cast-offs from the first game's development. Unused cartoon clips originally intended to be included in the original game fleetingly show both bosses hanging out with Dr. Neo Cortex. Tiny Tiger, however, was actually originally known as Tasmanian Tiger and later just Taz Tiger. Series composer Josh Mansell even eventually released an unused track that he composed for a boss fight in the first game against one of the brothers, Joe. But when the KOMODO brothers were brought back for Crash 2, he wrote an entirely new tune from scratch. Given that the original Crash was already a pretty stacked and challenging game as it is, it was probably for the best to save these bosses for the sequel. Number 5. Metroid Prime's 3D KRAID, Metroid Dread. Now, to be clear, Metroid's monstrous villain KRAID certainly made an appearance in the franchise prior to Metroid Dread, but each of those appearances was in 2D games. KRAID appeared in 2D in the original Metroid, its remake Metroid Zero Mission, and also Super Metroid, but it wasn't until last year's Metroid Dread that the iconic character finally got the full-fat 3D makeover that fans had long been requesting. Yet this was ultimately the culmination of almost 20 years of planning, as this big bad boy was indeed supposed to appear in 2002's Metroid Prime, enough that the boss had actually been fully designed and modelled. But due to Prime's famously rushed development, there wasn't time to implement it properly, so his planned boss fight was sadly thrown out. Fans then had to make do with the character's sporadic 3D appearances in the Super Smash Bros. Games until Metroid Dread finally delivered on the promise of that Prime battle. Number 4. Halo Wars Forerunner Sentinel. Halo Wars 2. Halo Wars' 11th mission, Cleansing, was originally set to feature a boss encounter with a Forerunner Sentinel during one of the level's later attack waves. The ship's development got far enough that its model was actually left within the game's code, such that modders have been able to add it back into the game. Concept art of the vessel was also later posted online by developer Ensemble Studios, but best of all, the impressive-looking machine reappeared in earnest in Halo Wars 2, now redubbed the Protector Sentinel. While the version in Halo 2 isn't a boss unit and is markedly smaller than the model from the original Halo Wars, as well as not sporting the same Super Sentinel beam, it's still neat that the original design wasn't simply thrown away forevermore. Number 3. Morpho Knight from the cancelled GameCube Kirby game, Kirby Star Allies. In 2004, Nintendo announced a Kirby game for the GameCube, yet due to design issues pertaining to multiplayer implementation, this game was quietly cancelled shortly after its formal unveiling. Yet when 2012's Kirby Dream Collection was released for the Wii, its instruction manual contained a page showing off one of the GameCube's discarded variations of Boss Meta Knight, a fiery butterfly-like take on the iconic character. And when Kirby Stars Allies was released for the Switch in 2018, one of its optional bosses was indeed the very same design, albeit with a few minor modifications. Now dubbed Morpho Knight, as in Metamorphosis, get it? Considering how insanely cool that original design was, it's a relief that it finally got some action, and also subsequently appeared in Super Kirby Clash and most recently the highly acclaimed Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Number 2. Resident Evil 4's Killer Dolls, Resident Evil Village. Back in 2003, Capcom released video of a gameplay demo for their highly anticipated upcoming sequel Resident Evil 4, a version of the game which ultimately never came to pass. This brief demo included a memorably terrifying sequence where Leon is attacked by a sublimely creepy fleet of small dolls toting large knives, and though this concept was assumed lost, it finally ended up reappearing in last year's Resident Evil Village. Village's unforgettable level sees players fending off a clan of killer clawed dolls sicked on them by Donna Beneviento. Worst of all is the horrifyingly grotesque ringleader, Angie, with whom Ethan is forced to play an especially gnarly game of hide and seek with until Ethan finally gets the better of Angie and her malevolent puppeteer Donna. Considering that this level is largely accepted to be one of Village's high points, bringing the dolls back was definitely a smart call, rather than an uninspired attempt to recycle some cast-off ideas from almost 20 years prior. And number 1, Pokémon Red and Blue's Professor Battle, Pokémon Sun and Moon. The legend of Pokémon Red and Blue's scrapped Professor Oak boss battle is so widespread that even the most casual Pokémon fans might well be aware of it. It was eventually discovered within Red and Blue's game data that there existed a trainer battle with Professor Oak. As per his ludicrously high stats, it was most likely intended to be a bonus boss fight right at the end of the game. Players have managed to access this battle using glitches or cheat devices, and though developer Game Freak removed the fight for reasons unknown, they ended up reusing the concept for Pokémon Sun and Moon a whole 20 years later. In Sun and Moon, the final battle of the Pokémon League is a similarly surprising showdown against the main professor, and adheres to most of the gameplay parameters from the proposed Oak fight, namely being pretty damn difficult. Good luck. And there we go, my friends. Those were 9 scrapped bosses used in other video games. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, and it'd be great to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Sometimes it can feel like we ourselves are left on the cutting room floor, but trust me, my friend, you deserve all of the best things in life, like love, happiness, and success. And remember, above all else, you're never alone with your problems. Friends, family, and professionals in the support industry, these people care about you and want you to do well. So let's get you back in the game so you can start smashing it. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.